When the dragon sees he is cast to the earth, he persecutes the woman. Now, from the time this started, he had been persecuting Israel, which is the woman. When the abomination of desolation went up, Israel had to flee, especially those in Judea had to flee to the mountains. At this time, Israel is at the height of her birth pains, because they were at their height of their birth pains and they were ready to bring about their deliverer. To prevent that, Satan decides to go up to heaven to make war in heaven, but fails and is bitterly thrown down and permanently kicked out of heaven. So it looks like he had multiple purposes for going to heaven. We know that he went to exalt his throne above Yahuwah, and clearly to prevent the deliverer. That's what Revelation 12 is about as well. The woman, and before she's about to deliver, that's dealing with the deliverer. But again, there's a lot that I'm still not going to address with that, because there's some other things that I want to look into first. As I stated, he had multiple purposes for going up to the heaven, because Revelation 12 lets us know that it was about the deliverer and who he pursued. But when you read other verses, he's also trying to exalt his throne, which, clearly, I guess, in his perception, if he puts his throne above Yahuwah, that stops the deliverer and everything else. So he has his own ulterior motives. Point to bring that up, though, is while all this stuff is happening up in the heavens, Israel never stopped fleeing, or at least there's no verse that says that they stopped. It appears that those that were able to flee fled. So when he sees that he'd been kicked out of heaven, which means he must have fell to the earth like lightning, he hit the earth so fast he had to come to the realization that he was kicked out of heaven. That's how fast he was thrown down. So when he sees that he was kicked out of heaven, he resumes persecuting Israel. Because remember, when the abomination of desolation went up, they had to flee. Nothing ever said they stopped fleeing. What it tells you is they flee, and he ends up going up to heaven for his own personal agenda. Clearly he fails at that miserably, so he gets back to earth, and it tells you that he's still pursuing them. So while he's in hot pursuit of them, he attempts to have them carried away with the flood waters that spewed out of his mouth, while they're still trying to get away into the wilderness. Now, of course, that is another failed attempt, because the earth opens its mouth to help Israel, right? Help the woman, which is Israel. Then Israel is given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness, where a place is prepared for her for time, times, and half a time, which is 3.5 years. And this is a second segment of the 3.5 years. So now we're moving into page 21 through 22. While Israel is in the wilderness for a time, times, and half a time, she will be pampered and cared for. Now during this period of time, while some of the Israelites hide in the wilderness, the 2 witnesses appear on the scene for 1,260 days. We know this period of 1,260 days is a time marker for the second half, because the 2 witnesses are present until the time of the 6th trumpet, and they are then killed and resurrected and taken into heaven. Their being taken up into heaven brings about the second woe, which we'll address later. Also, during this period of time, the beast will make war with the saints for a time, times, and dividing of times. Same period of time. We are dealing with 2 distinct segments of time. And it would be an error to lump these segments into a 1 7-year period, because it doesn't allow Scripture to speak for itself. So when you step back and allow Scripture to tell the story, everything falls into place. Scripture shows us we are dealing with multiple periods of time, which are addressed in 2 segments. The first segment of time deals with Gentiles treading down Jerusalem, stopping the daily sacrifice, and polluting the sanctuary. Several time markers are given during this time. So the time markers that we see in the first segment of time is 1,290 days plus 45 days past that, which would be 1,335 days for a blessing. there is the 42 months and the 2,300 days to mark the start through the completion of the cleansing of the sanctuary. So I hope that wasn't too much, but all of that is in the first segment of time. The second segment of time deals with Israel being carried away into the wilderness to hide from the face of the serpent for a time, times, and half a time. The two witnesses appear on the scene for 1,260 days, and the beast makes war with the saints for a time, times, and dividing a time. Then there is the 42 months. So I know it was a lot. What makes this beautiful is you can go ahead and play it back and re-examine it. And I have the document. So hopefully everything isn't going too fast. But yeah, so you're just dealing with 2 segments of time. And again, we know this on how to divide it up based on the details provided in the scripture. And the only way I was able to break this down and understand this was to break away from the automatic 7-year tribulation and breaking it down based on scriptural details, not based on common teachings that have been propagated to us for years. By doing that, you're able to, again, let scripture speak for itself and tell you the story. Next, here's something else I want you to take note of. Some of the Israelites depart into the wilderness. Not all. Notice Revelation 12 verse 17. This is when the dragon's attempt to sweep Israel away with the flood failed, because Israel, which is the woman, was given wings to fly into the wilderness to hide from his face for 3.5 years. It's important to know that not all of Israel goes safely into the wilderness. What you're going to notice is that because of his failed attempt, he becomes very wroth or extremely angry at the woman, which is Israel. And he goes to make war against the remnant of her seed. Now, scripture has already made it crystal clear that Israel was flown into the wilderness to hide from his face, but yet you have Israelites that he is able to go make war with. So that makes it clear that not all of Israel made it into the wilderness. Because of his failed attempt, he becomes very angry or wroth with the woman, which is Israel, and he goes to make war with the remnant of her seed. This too is another marker, and it lets us know that not all of Israel was carried away into the wilderness. There was a remnant of Israelites that were left. So these are the bloodline descendants and grafted in Gentiles. This is because believers of HaMashiach are considered seeds of Abraham as well and heirs according to the promise. That's Galatians chapter 3 verse 29, which gives me the impression that, okay, since you're looking at some of the Israelites going into the wilderness, it makes you wonder, are these the ones that were considered worthy to escape? As mentioned in Luke 21 verse 36, are these those people that were counted worthy to escape? He not only went to make war with the remnant of Israel's seed, but he prevailed against them. According to the book of Revelation, we know that the enemy tried to flood Israel but failed. So, he not only went to make war with the remnant of Israel's seed, but he also prevailed against them. So it means many of them died. This scene of some of the Israelites escaping to the wilderness while the others are killed is modeled in Leviticus chapter 16, especially when you read Leviticus 16, 5 through 10 and Leviticus 16, 5 through 22. This deals with the Day of Atonement. Next we have pages 22 through 23. Again, recalling the scene where Satan tried to flood the woman but failed because she escaped to the wilderness, so he turns his wrath and anger to the remnant of her seed, those who didn't escape into the wilderness, those who were left behind. He pursues them to make war with them. Remember, this is a time marker. It's very important to pay attention to. But the third angel, which is the angel who sounded his trumpet first, had Satan cast down to earth, is following behind the remnant that was left behind. The remnant who was being pursued and persecuted by the enemy. And he follows behind the remnant. As he follows behind the remnant, he gives them a very serious warning. The warning was to tell them that If any man worships the beast and his image, and receives the mark in his forehead or in his hand, will also drink the wine of the wrath of Yahuwah, which will be poured out without mixture, meaning it's unadulterated. It will not be watered down. It won't be softened. It will be harsh. They are being warned to stay away from worshiping the beast and his mark, and so forth. But he ends the warning by pointing out, here is the patience of the saints. Okay, so this is another identifying marker. So Revelations 13, 7 through 10 expounds or explains on the patience of the saints to give us more insight. The patience of the saints is a reassuring promise. It's an admonishment telling them to hold on until the end, because eventually their captors that put them in captivity will go into captivity themselves. Those who kill them with the sword will be killed with the sword. So they must be patient and have faith. They must suffer through until the end. Then their enemies will receive their payback for what they did to the children of Israel. Revelation 14:12 also gives a little more insight into who the remnant of her seed is, and it affirms who they are. We know they are the bloodline Israelites because they are the seed of the woman, which is Israel. We also know it includes those who are grafted in because if they believe in Hamashiach, they too are the seeds of Abraham, which still includes Israel because it talks about the promise. This is confirmed by Revelation 14:12, which says, here is the patience of the saints. Here, they that keep the commandments of Yahuwah and the faith of Hamashiach. This is something the bloodline and grafted in Gentiles should be doing. Keeping the commandments of Yahuwah and keeping the faith of Yeshua. Notice it mentions both. You must do both. You can't have one without the other. Also, during this time, the beast is dominating the world. He's not only prevailing against the children of Israel, he's also been given power over the world, power over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. This is the home stretch of this era of time. The beast is operating in full power and ravishing the world. He is taking the world by storm. This leads into pages 23 through 25. Something to remember when we examine this situation with the beast dominating the world. Remember that no matter who you are, there will always be opposition. There's always going to be people that fight against you. And you want to keep in mind that if mankind and demons fight against the authority of the Most High in Hamashiach, then we shouldn't expect anything less from anyone else, including the beast. Everyone doesn't want to go along with the new regime, and some have been fighting against it the entire time. Clearly, we know there's opposition to the beast's kingdom because we see in Revelation chapter 13, verses 3 through 4, the beast suffers a deadly head wound. This gives the impression that he too faced opposition that resulted in his death. Then we see the false prophet appear on the scene. He's just as powerful as the first beast, according to scripture. And he performs lying signs and great wonders. That's why it's so important to have a strong biblical foundation, because there's going to be so much deception. It's not going to get better from here. It's only going to get worse. But again, this false prophet appears on the scene with lying signs and great wonders, signs that are even in the heavens, in the Shamayim, like making fire come from the Shamayim to earth. He performs miracles and deceives the world, those whose names are not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. The second beast, aka the false prophet, had an image of the first beast, which is the king, who died but lived again. Now, according to Revelation 13, verse 4, the people of the earth marveled and worshipped the beast and the dragon. People marveled at the beast's death and resurrection. It appears his death had something to do with war, because after he dies and comes back to life, they ask, who can make war with the beast? Honestly, who can? Who can fight against someone who dies but then comes back to life? That's why kamikaze fighters are very hard to win against, because they're willing to die. Now, add that to someone who dies but comes back to life. Who can make war with that? And honestly, who can? During this time of worshiping the beast and the dragon, it is also the time when the mark of the beast is put into action. Those who don't go along to get along will be killed. If they don't worship the image of the beast, accept the mark of the beast, so on and so forth, they're pretty much going to be killed. Now, of course, this is a climactic point. And something else to point out with the image of the beast, the mark of the beast, you want to keep in mind that they were already warned about the mark of the beast. So they get the warning and then the mark of the beast goes into action. So I know a lot of people are looking for the mark of the beast to appear like tomorrow. And I know that there's probably technology already in place for it. But according to scripture, when you follow the rest of the breadcrumbs laid out, there's going to be a warning and then it's going to be implemented. And it appears that certain people have been removed out the way. I wouldn't be surprised if children were removed out of the way during the time of this beast, because this is a time where people have to make a choice, and usually children don't have choices. This is just me talking, my thought process. And we know that some of the Israelites at this point had already gone into the wilderness. So those who are left behind are going to be dealing with a choice to accept the mark or not. This is why an angel had to send a warning first, because Yahuwah does nothing first without warning his prophets, or I'm like paraphrasing, and even angels are messengers. So he's not going to do anything without first warning people.